Today's show is brought to you by Imperial Yeast. You hear us gushing over Imperial Yeast all the time, and that's because their yeast performs for us in every batch that we brew. Imperial Yeast is adored by commercial breweries and home brewers alike. Their pitch right pouches are jam-packed with over 200 billion fresh yeast cells, guaranteed to deliver flawless, fast fermentations every time. Imperial yeast strains are grown by a team of pro brewers and home brewers who live to help other brewers learn more and ferment better. Join any recipe receiving tier of our Super Duper Homebrew Club and get a free upgrade to premium Imperial yeast with every recipe kit that ships out to you. Learn more at homebrewhappyhour.com/club and come brew with us.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Choosing coffee for stouts, keeping your keezer in a hot garage, harvesting SCOBYs from commercial kombucha, and pitching expired liquid yeast. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 227. Hello and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submitted question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today, I am joined by the Director of Operations at cmbecker.com, right over my shoulder, Mr. James Carlson, as well as the President and Chief Keg Washer of kegconnection.com, Mr. Todd Burns. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing? Oh, wait, I said I wasn't ever going to ask y'all that. It's awkward. I'm just assuming y'all are doing good. I hope y'all are doing good. It's been...
Not me. It's been a rough day, I'll tell you. Let's go. I'll go into it in detail. How about that?
Hold on. I like that you started off like a Rodney Dangerfield joke. I get no respect from my wife, I tell you. But go ahead. Tell your story, Todd. What's wrong?
No, I'm kidding. Oh. I told you from now on when he asked me that I was going to go into a long, detailed story about what a bad day I was having, so I was starting out on it.
Now, I really did. I don't know why. I just had a huge flash of of Rodney Dangerfield. I don't know how y'all felt about him. He was before my time, but I've watched a lot of Dangerfield. That was very Dangerfield, though. I tell you what, these homebrewers, they give me no respect. Something, no respect. Now I feel like Michael Scott impersonating Rodney Dangerfield. But anyway, welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour, friends. We've got a great show for you today. I'm going to start off the show with an announcement. Let me cut the music. We don't need that anymore. We're sold out on the used Herms equipment officially. Todd, you have officially sold it out, right?
Yep. All three systems, two have already shipped out the door, and the other one's being put together now. So we'll be selling new systems soon, though.
Yep. I'm pumped. I'm super excited. I think first off, we knew that the systems you were selling, the used ones, that they were going to go quick, mainly because of how affordable you listed them at. And I didn't realize though how quick, like people, I want to say it was not quite 3 weeks, right? That you had them listed, or is this like the third week?
The third. So if we did the podcast on a Thursday, this is the third week. Yeah.
Okay, it was the third week. Okay, yeah, which is still pretty quick considering the systems,
but they're expensive.
They are expensive, even though they were affordable what you were offering them at. But those kinds of systems aren't usually impulse purchases. So I knew I was confident. Yeah, Todd, you're not going to have a problem selling them. I just didn't think it'd be that quick. But if you are listening, if you're behind, what was that?
The new ones are going to be nice. I am fired up. James and I are working on them nonstop right now. So
Yep.
I know y'all are.
In fact, I was rudely interrupted while I was trying to put some electrical in earlier for specification because I had to be reminded that the podcast was starting.
Listen, man, one thing you need to make a resolution on in 2022 is being on time to Zoom calls. Like I need to put that on your calendar because you have my 13th anniversary is coming up, and if there's one thing Todd's drilled in my head for 13 years is if you're not early, you're late. And
I know, and my phone never makes any noise when I have. So I had 5 reminders about the podcast, but I'd have to actually open my phone and look at it to see the reminders. Do they have something that maybe runs an electrical shock to your privates or something, or some way that it would really remind me that I need to do it?
We don't know. I don't even want to look into the research and development on that product. But
I'll Google that and see what comes up.
Hold on, let me put it on family friendly search first. Most of the time when Todd tells me to Google something, I have to put on family filter first. No, I always joke I need reminders for my reminders on some things. It's like when people say I need a vacation for my vacation. I live inside Google Calendar and the Monday app. We should get Monday to sponsor the show. As much as I talk about them now, not necessarily on the show, but I've recommended Monday to probably half a dozen small business owners, Todd, recently. It's
really,
yeah, just because people. It's funny how productivity tracking is such a universal issue with companies, but the solution though is monday.com. If you use promo code, one day maybe. Until then, I'm going to bleep out actually the word Monday because they don't give us money. But anyway, moving on. The small talk we have for this week is pretty short, especially since compared to some episodes where the majority of it's small talk. So I'll be brief. Our Super Duper Homebrew Club monthly recipe kits, reminding you in case you're new here, or just refreshing your memory in case you have bad short-term memory like I do, the Simply Juice Pale Ale or Brian's Kolsch. We have been so swamped that, again, another week has gone by and I haven't brewed. Have y'all at least been brewing those test batches for James shaking his head no. I imagine no. Todd's not brewing either. The brow tag has kind of been taken up the vast majority of time. And then for me, like the server issues that we're having to try to launch our own platform on our site has been giving me issues. If you are a developer and you listen to this show, or if you are even just more savvy with WordPress than I am, and I have like 12 years of experience, but if you're more savvy with getting a plugin to work on a share or a VPS solution, please reach out to me, Joshua at homebrewhappyhour.com or Joshua at techconnection.com, because our server is getting so much bandwidth issues that my emails are sporadic too. So I need help on that. But you guys, like you were saying, Todd, you're working on the pacification thing for the kettles. How's that coming along? Is that looking good?
Oh yeah, really good. We're going to be able to do 2 kettles at a time, and it's we're getting it all set up. We might probably start early next week, right? Maybe even some tomorrow. I don't know. We'll probably test. You'll probably do some testing tomorrow with the temperature, right?
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can test it this afternoon.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
yeah. We got the boxes basically 90% built.
Dude, that's exciting. That's super exciting. I always like it when things are on time, because I'm such a stranger to that concept of somebody messaged me. They're like, hey man, you were talking about how April 1st you're going to launch the program. And I was like, hey, on to the next question. Oh wait, this isn't a podcast episode. I'd
have just said April Fools.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. You're right. That's like when Todd sending me emails about electric shock reminders. I just Todd, don't be distracted in the middle of recording.
I'm not distracted.
Anyway, so yes, if you want more information on the recipe kits or any of the tier options that we have for our super duper homebrew club, go to homebrewhappyhour.com/club, or you can join right now through Patreon at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. But again, I can't reiterate enough. We're trying to offer multiple options because there are people adverse to using Patreon, and I don't blame you. Patreon, at all the good that they have, they also upped our fees. They upped our platform fees. They started charging tax on people. It's getting very expensive to use Patreon. So rest assured, we are trying to make our own in-house things. So you get the most bang for your buck. We are able to get more of your donation, because the idea behind the donations is that they're supporting the show. We have had people tell us, guys, like, I don't care about your show. I don't listen. I just want a cheap recipe kit every month. And that's okay too. But you can always go to homebrewhappyhour.com again /club to learn more information. I think that's all the small talk I have. People have been asking Todd about the system, and we're on track for that now 5-week mark, right? I think a week ago you said 6 weeks. We're still on track. I mean,
we should be on track for 5 weeks. If we have had an issue with a shipment issue on the stencil that we need, and we're hoping it gets here tomorrow. If it does, we'll be on track. If it doesn't, I'm going to scream and yell. And
that, and that was a carrier issue, right? Like we've been
definitely.
We've been.
It was DHL and USPS.
Yeah. Well, in USPS has been terrible to me in the last couple of years. FedEx all of a sudden started dropping the ball on us, and people in our Patreon, in our Super Duper Homebrew Club, we use FedEx, and they've been dropping the ball on recipe kits every now and then with, which means we have to do the corrections on those. I know, James, you've been having a headache with carriers of all variety. This is the year.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who they are. Everybody's overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And it's making our life a living hell.
And I just can't wait till COVID can't be their excuse anymore. Because right now, they're like, hey, man, what do you have an update? Oh, we would, but COVID. Like, but what specifically about COVID? Oh, COVID. And then they hang up. I'm trying to use COVID still as my excuse when Todd's like, hey, what's the status on that video you said you'd publish? I'm like, oh, COVID, hang up.
Hey, what is the status on that?
We've got four great we've got 4 great questions for this.
Hey, I know a lot of you are waiting for part number 2 of the extract video series, and you should probably give them an update on that. If
it's not out by Friday, let's see. Today's the 22nd, the 30th. If it's not out by Friday the 30th, we'll film Todd kicking me in the balls.
Deal. Deal.
Okay.
So you don't make those kind of claims.
Hold on. I got to go look for my steel-toe boots. I'll be right back.
I'm that confident. We're that close. We're that close. I think I'll edit that part out and I'll make it a $5 bet in the edit. No, I won't.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah. Anyway, we do have 4 great questions for this week's show. So let's get going. Even though it might be a quick show, because some of these questions I can just hear Todd going, yes, and then we move on. So first question came from our buddy Rick, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. And Rick wrote, hi guys, I have laughed as Todd gives you such a hard time about using Folgers coffee for your breakfast stout. So I want to know, what coffee would he use instead? Are there traits from the coffee that I should take into consideration before brewing a coffee stout? Are there certain types of coffee that are more suitable for adding to beer? Dark roast or light roast, or does it all boil down to personal preference? Thanks. Rick, you're right. He gives me a hard time for no reason. Folgers is the working man's coffee. It's the blue collar coffee. It's the white collar coffee. It's the American man's coffee. Todd, what's your problem with Folgers?
It's not a...
You started to say something else.
It's not a... How do you say that? Arabica?
That's
Arabica, yeah.
The beans aren't... Okay.
It's that old 50s beans that they give you a lot of... they were cheap and it got you... I don't want to say high, but really woke you up. But they just don't like the taste of it. I mean, I just like a nice coffee. I think it's a very personal preference. Like,
yeah, it's subjective, just like beer.
Yeah. I mean, different people like different kinds of coffee. I can't tell you what the best coffee is, but I would say better than Folgers. How about that?
Okay. Well, so let me talk about my breakfast stout. And you tell me, because y'all both like it, y'all both admitted,
that's one of the best homebrewed breakfast stouts I've ever had,
and it's the only good beer that me and my dad consistently make. We, we're blind squirrels. We find that every now and then on other styles, but we've seemed to dial that one in. Todd, when you drink it, is the Folgers what you don't like about Folgers? Can you still taste it, but it's overridden by the rest, and that's why you like it, or does the coffee? Does the things you don't like about Folgers not come through because, it's just as an adjunct, not an adjunct, pardon me.
Every time I drink it, I say, God, this is so good. Just think how much better it could be if it had a decent coffee in it.
What would you put in it then? Would you do the true to style, so to say, and get the, what is it, Kona? That's what Founders?
Kona and Sumatra. It's got both. They've got 2 different types. The Founders Breakfast Stout is Kona and Sumatra.
I don't know if I'd put Kona in there. I'm okay. Your dad is really cheap, so he uses Folgers. Really, really cheap because he uses Folgers in his coffee. But I'm too cheap probably to use Kona because it's like $20 a pound for the 100% stuff, right?
Oh, it's expensive. It is for sure.
I mean, I would probably just use a good, solid coffee and grind the beans fresh and put them in there and and try to, just use the best coffee I mean, I've always got good coffee at my house. I could use anything off the shelf there. Except maybe what my wife buys, one of those flavored, what is it, Taste of San Antonio sometimes?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Taster's Choice.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised y'all don't use Taster's Choice, frankly.
Shut up. I don't even
you
heard
could
of
just
Taster's
throw
Choice.
some in there at the end of the brew and not even have to worry about steeping it or anything. Just, yeah.
Nice.
But anyway, yeah, I think any good
Okay, well,
if you like to drink it, I think you'll like it in your beer.
Okay, I'm moving on to James to ask you real quick. I'm done being chastised by my boss. James, is there though like traits of coffee? Like and I should have Google searched this before we started the show. Like a dark roast, I imagine could add some bitterness to the coffee or to the beer that you might not want, as opposed to a light roast. Is that a good assumption, or does?
It's possible. I would think you'd have to add a whole lot of that coffee for that to come out. Plus, you're not boiling it, so I think that a lot of that stuff is more aromatic.
Okay.
I think. I don't know. I don't do a whole lot of stouts, but I would think that the bitterness absolutely can come through. But a good way to test that is do some cold steeping and then do a pot and brew it and see if the bitterness is worse or less cold steeping versus brewing it through
brilliant. Yeah, and you would definitely find out doing it that way.
Yeah,
and you're right. That is, I couldn't even tell you. My dad, who does watch every week and shaking his head as you're calling him frugally conscious or frugally minded.
Cheap, I think, is the word.
Oh, you did use cheap. You didn't specify.
Sorry, Scott. I think what y'all should do next time is just brew it without coffee and duct tape a thing of Taster's Choice next to it. People can just throw it in with a spoon and stir it before they drink
That's
it.
funny. Okay, that's funny. I need to ask him. I don't even know what kind he uses, like what line of roast, because I know he's been consistent, like the last couple of years we've brewed it, of making sure, because the first one turned out so good, we're trying to replicate it, and like, well, we got to do it one for one, how we did it. I don't know if he uses a medium roast for his day-to-day coffee or a darker roast or a light roast. But yeah, James, that's a good point. That would be for someone like Rick, who Rick, it might benefit you to do what James said and take different ones, cold steeping, and seeing how it affects it, so that you can dial it in to which coffee you want. Because like you said, James, it isn't. I assumed that it could add more bitterness, but you're right. You would have to do more to
be a lot.
It would, it'd have to be a whole lot more than the 5 pound or 5 gallon recipe is calling for.
Another option too, if you think about it, is you can go to the store and get some Guinness or any kind of stout you like, and then go ahead and make your tea. What I mean by tea is, if you're going to do it cold, steep some coffee and then add a little to a pint glass of stout and just see how much of difference it makes.
Exactly.
That's what I would do. That's what Clay Turney would do.
Does he still listen to the show?
I don't know. I get texts from him every now and then. I always tell him we need to get you on the show, and he's like, yes.
We do. You tell me when he's available. We'll have him on. He's my favorite engineer, and I don't even want to talk beer. I want to talk first-person drone flying. That's all I want to talk about.
Definitely. Oh, he's the best I've ever seen. I don't know how you can fly something that fast.
You showed me a video of his, and
it's crazy, isn't it?
I was like, how does someone do that? But anyway, Rick, yes, with not dragging this out to be in the whole hour episode, I bet you there are people listening who will write in that will argue there are certain types of coffee more suitable for adding to beer. If you're one of those people, email me, joshua@kedconnection.com, to make sure I get it. Or better yet, text me, because that's the best way. 325-305-6107. Give me your feedback, or do it that same number, but the voicemail line, and let us know, because I'd love to play your feedback, because none of us are experts on coffee additives. We just don't do it a lot. The three of us don't do it. I think arguably I do it the most, and I only do it once or twice a year. So it's just not a style necessarily that we're big on keeping year round or doing a bunch. But the good thing is, of the 4 dozen listeners that we have, one of them is bound to be an expert. So hopefully, Rick, we can get you some feedback. But like James said, get your favorite stout commercial and start steeping and doing testing. And if anything, that's just going to be a fun evening of taste testing and seeing like that kind of pretending like you're a scientist kind of thing. But watch, Rick is probably a real scientist. But just the whole experimenting thing is a lot of fun to do, and you'll be able to dial it in with which coffee brings out the result you're looking for by doing that. I think that the answer to any question ultimately that's subjective like that is just try it out and see what works for you, right? So anyways, Rick, thank you so much for submitting your question. This is a great time to remind all of you that if and when we take your question on a future episode, we do give you a $25 gift card to catconnection.com, courtesy of Mr. Todd Burns. Moving on to question number 2 was a text message from our buddy Conrad. Again, that line's 325-305-6107. Conrad texted, I just moved to the South from Michigan for a job, and I'm lucky that I was able to drag all of my brew stuff with me. My teaser was kept in my garage before, and I never seemed to have any issues. I'm worried about keeping it in my new garage with summer coming up. It's where my wife wants it, though, so unless I can science her on this, I'm afraid I'll ruin the teaser in no time. What do you think about keeping a teaser in a hot garage? I'll start off. I'm not a handy person. I'm not mechanical. I don't need to tell you guys that. But my dad's neighbor, Eric, he just sold his teaser last year because he stopped brewing, and I don't know what he's doing now with his life, but he stopped brewing. He had a huge chest freezer that he was using to lager and draft from in his garage as long as he's lived next to my dad's for the last 6 years. And he never had any issues with like a compressor going out or things like that. I don't know if he got lucky or is it possible, but your electric bill is just going to go up. Todd, you have a kegerator in your garage that is frequently being used. What do you think about Conrad's question?
My dad had a freezer and a refrigerator in his garage from before I can remember until they moved out of their house. So 30 plus years. And my dad, of course, is also cheap, and he never replaced any of them. So they lasted 30 years.
Well, I have a beer fridge, and I have my dorm fridge is what my wife still made me keep as a beer fridge. I mean, I decided to keep it as a beer fridge. She had some input, but I decided. And we have,
of course,
yeah. And we have the side by side freezer on the left and fridge out there for storing extra groceries and all that. And this question, I guess, is relevant to me too. I know of a lot of friends growing up that had garage fridges, and they seem to work fine, like you're saying. I don't even know I guess in the summer, I would think logically they're going to have to work a little harder. So you might.
Yeah. I mean, most people I know that had a fridge in their garage didn't call it a fridge. They didn't call it a garage fridge. They called it a beer fridge. Yeah. That's right. It seems like all men have kept beer in a fridge in their garage. Since the beginning of the refrigerator, right, James?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. And James, you are the most mechanical person I know, for better or for worse, of my inner circle. Can you imagine a scenario where you would tell someone? Now, we've on the show told people before, don't open ferment, or don't leave your fermenter in a hot garage because you're not going to be able to get it down to temp. But if you have a chest freezer in your garage, by all means, that should be fine, right?
Yeah, just keep your evaporator core or condenser core clean. Yeah, well, both. Just clean your cores, both evaporator and condenser, and keep everything clean, and make sure there's plenty of air circulating around it. If you want to, I wouldn't put it inside a closet inside a hot garage, because you can't get enough. That's just a heat exchanger. So you're taking heat, you're pulling heat out of something and putting heat in something, and that's how that whole thing works. So as long as you have good circulation, I think you'll be all right. I had a 24 by 24 shop for several years, and I had it looked like a 40s fridge. I mean, it would develop this much ice if you let it, and it was still running when I gave it away. So
you know what?
And it was in a hot.
That's not
shop,
a fair
so-
comparison because those fridges from like the 40s and 50s are the only they still run. Those are the only fridges still run. My parents.
Yeah, they were probably overbuilt a little bit.
Yeah, well, that I wish we could go back to that because every appliance in my life fails, and I go to my parents' house and they have a fridge in that game room.
Mhm.
That was my grandmother's, my mom's mom, I believe, and it looks like it's from the late 30s. I mean, I'm exaggerating. It's probably from the 50s, but even then, it's one of those old. I mean, green colored.
I was just about to say, if it's green, it's from the 60s.
Okay, it's from the 60s.
Because I think every appliance from the 60s was painted green.
It's a green fridge, and it's been kicking forever. And that thing, I mean, both the top and bottom. And I don't think they've ever had to replace a part on it. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's nuts. And then like I said, I've gone through 2 or 3 fridges as an adult. Thanks a lot, Samsung, LG, and GM or whatever manufacturer, Whirlpool.
You know what? And fridges are a lot. They're not near as good as they were. I'm telling you, those old fridges lasted forever. I mean, they'd last 20, 30, 40 years, but they're just not built as well anymore. Now they're more energy efficient, but I mean, my dad's old fridges would turn the meters to get the meter spinning in the middle of the store.
Oh, we need that though. I want to go back to the 60s green fridge and the toilets that was a 5-gallon flush and what other
towel bathrooms.
The non-energy efficient. Yeah, today's Earth Day too. Happy Earth Day, Earth.
yeah. Happy Earth Day. Give me a 60s freezer.
Yeah, give me a
fridge.
Exactly. Yeah. Won't be my problem. Sorry,
Well,
kids.
a lot of people would say that it's going to use a lot more energy in the garage, but I'm not sure. I don't know what the trade-off is because when you're running a fridge in your house, it's heating the house up. So it's cooling that little space inside, but it's the heat is coming out of it and going into your house. So I don't know how that works.
We're going to have an HVAC expert weigh in.
We should have,
we really should.
We should have an HVAC.
We should. And then I have a million questions for him too. I've never had a 2-story house. Why is the upstairs so damn hot? But heat rises, I know, blah, blah, blah. But anyways, if you're an HVAC expert and you have input on this question, email.
Should be balanced correctly, by the way. That's the problem.
Can you come balance it for me? I'm too.
Oh no! When it was built, I meant.
Oh well, yeah. I'll digress real quick. I'm considering putting in a mini split up in my because the only upstairs is the loft, which is my oldest.
That's a great idea. Actually, I think that's a great idea.
I'm gonna my.
I need to talk to Cleve.
Yep.
I will. Next time I come up there, if y'all get me contacted with them, I'd love to.
Yep.
Yeah, I looked at it. It seems like a mini split might be our resolution. We can get an HVAC person to shut off that send from the central to the loft, so that way it's not just wasting space, wasting air, and then put a mini split, and maybe that'll solve our problems. Because this summer, I bet you she's going to be dying. But anyways, Conrad, thank you so much for texting your question. Again, you can use that to text or to call 325-305-6107. Moving on to the third question for this week's episode came from our buddy Kevin J, who wrote in to the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Kevin wrote, Joshua, I love the podcast. Todd and James provide so much information, and it's something I look forward to every week.
Yeah.
People are.
I can't believe you've read that one.
People are too comfortable, man. People are too comfortable. I'm gonna give Kevin a week free pass next time you're in San Marcos to train. My wife has been buying kombucha so much lately that I'm tired of spending money and I want to make it. If I wanted to harvest the yeast from the boots she is buying, what do I need to do? How come Todd doesn't have a kombucha kit on his site for me? These are the questions I need answers to today. I will throw the first part to you. Todd, why don't you have a kombucha starter? Technically,
because you said you were going to do one and you haven't done it yet.
Did I say that? Oh, no.
Yep.
Is it in an email or was it on another?
You were going to make the little, the hotel, and you were going to collect some and we were going to sell them. And
from my own.
Yeah, you're the kombucha expert, not us.
Yeah,
no, I do remember that. And then,
I've never even brewed a kombucha beer. So you're the expert on it.
Well, my SCOBYs died in the Great Freeze of February.
Yep, I did know that.
Unfortunately, they didn't make it because my wife. We were showing we were showing the house to move and getting it all prepped, that she was like, you can't keep that kombucha in there. People aren't going to want to buy our house if they see your kombucha. I was like, why do people care? But again, I, being the good husband that I am, I obliged her wishes on my own free will. And I moved them to my garage where they died in a week, unfortunately. But you're right. I don't have any, since I've moved, I have not brewed any. But the good thing is, Kevin, you can make a starter from commercial kombucha. Super easy. You're basically following the steps that you can. I'll put in the show notes the link. I posted the recipe I use to make kombucha when you have a starter SCOBY. You can still follow these directions with a can or bottle. Usually they're bottles of commercial kombucha, and ignore the part about a SCOBY, but it's going to take longer. But what you do is you'd have to use the entire 8 to 16 ounces of kombucha, the more the better, it's the commercial kombucha, and pour it into your sweet tea at the end once you get the temperature right, which I think is like in the high 70s, low 80s before you pitch it. You might want to add even a cup more sugar than the recipe calls for, and wait, and you'll start seeing a SCOBY develop. But it is going to take longer, obviously, than if you start with a actual pre-made SCOBY, which for those of you listening who are new, SCOBY is symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, I think is what it stands for. And it's
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I had it on.
I wouldn't have been able to remember that.
It's on a screen right here. No, I'm kidding. There's no screen here. It is. It's that circle-looking wafer that is disgusting. My kids think it's the worst-looking thing. I made a joke. I put it in my mouth to be funny with my kids, and I regret it. Some people eat SCOBYs. I would not ever do that again. It wasn't that funny. It wasn't worth it. But I highly recommend, Kevin, buy the starter SCOBY. Buy it on Amazon. They might be $15, but you get free shipping. It's worth it because you don't have to wait for your culture to start growing to then start making another batch. And really, if you're doing a 1 gallon batch and you're pouring in a commercial thing for your SCOBY, it's going to take at least a month. And someone listening is going to tell me, Josh, you're an idiot. It's going to take this long. But I would get the SCOBY, suck it up instead of buying, because kombucha is so expensive anyways. What is a 16 ounce thing of kombucha at the store? $6, $5? Kombucha is not cheap. So I always recommend to people, you should be making it. Buy a starter kit. Those 1 gallon jugs are super cheap as well. Cheesecloth for the top or something breathable to cover it. And it's basically open fermentation from there. And it's ready per taste. So you pour it, and when it tastes terrible, it's done. So I don't have a whole.
Yay! Let's come make some.
I'm kidding. A lot of people batch sweeten it with fruit, or they dry hop, for a lack of a better term, with their favorite fruits or whatnot to add some flavor. Because raw kombucha is not the best, but it is good for your tummy. But if your wife is already buying them and you don't want to buy a starter SCOBY, use one of hers, but you got to use the entire thing. Go to homebrewhappyhour.com, look up, or go to the show notes for this episode, 227, right? 227, yes. And I will put the link to that article that has the recipe, and follow it. And just when it says, now throw in your starter SCOBY, that's when you're pouring the entire content of that kombucha bottle that your wife has bought. And you should still be good to go. It's just going to take a little bit longer. But we have talked about, Todd, I think I owe your cousin a SCOBY as well. I think we talked about breeding them for a starter kit and all that. So I need to get back on that. Now that I'm settled in my house, I don't have a good excuse. What if we brewed it up there when I come up? Do we have a spot that we can keep kombucha up there,
Yeah, I don't have to drink it, right?
We've got plenty of areas.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got that whole front area that's not even being occupied.
Okay, perfect. So
we can put it anywhere.
I haven't developed a taste for it yet.
No, that and Folgers coffee. Don't have taste for it yet.
What do you think, James? You like kombucha?
No, I don't like sour beer, and I don't like sour tea.
Yeah, that was the main not complaint. I've been called a hypocrite, and I'll fight this claim, because they go, you drink kombucha, why don't you drink sour beer? It's different, guys. Sour beer is not good for your gut health. I'm not drinking kombucha because I genuinely like the taste. I'm drinking it to be regular, and I don't want to eat Metamucil. Like kombucha, whether it's a placebo effect or not, when I do drink kombucha, I do generally feel better in my gut. But sour beer does not make me feel better in my gut. I don't drink kombucha and go, man, that was really delicious. I drink it and go, all right, got that down for the day. So anyway, we'll like I said, Kevin, just go to the show notes for the recipe, and anyone listening, if you're interested in kombucha. I can't reiterate enough. It's super easy, and it's probably the easiest thing to make. It's not going to be the best tasting thing you've ever made, but it's going to be the easiest thing you ever made, short to boiling water. So, Kevin, thank you so much for submitting your question. One last reminder that if and when we take your question on a future episode, we give you a $25 gift card to ketconnection.com, which brings us to our last question of this week's show. It came from our buddy Paul M., who also used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Paul wrote, I have a question about expired liquid yeast. My local shop will sometimes sell liquid yeast at heavy discounts when it's close to expiring or if it's recently expired. I've never bought it before, but I'm going to try it soon. Would you recommend making a starter even if the yeast isn't past the date printed on the packaging? I have never made a starter before, so what should I look for to make sure that the starter is good to use? Thank you for your help, Paul. I've never made a starter because Owen from Imperial would punch me in the mouth. No, I know plenty of people who actually make starters with Imperial, and they swear that that's the best way to brew, to pitch, is a pack of Imperial in a starter, and they go like 4 hours later, it's motorboating. But that's a whole different thing. James, I'm going to throw it to you first. You're the king of using only ingredients that no one else wants. Like, you'll go in there, like when I'm getting yeast for a recipe, even if it's one that's I'm not paying for because Todd covers the cost, I still will tell the guys up there, hey, get me one of them fresh packs. You go look for the oldest packs, and I've never known. When's the last time you've had delayed fermentation? It's been a while. It feels like. Yeah. So what would you tell Paul?
Yeah, I'd definitely get some, and if it depends on how cheap it is. If the yeast is $1 cheaper, then it's not worth the effort, especially if it's Imperial yeast. But if it's a good enough bargain, I would definitely take it back and throw some DME and some water, boil it, cool it down, and then add that to it. Another thing that's super cool, and it's gotten really reasonable, is they've got stir plates on Amazon that are not a lot of money. And in fact, the one that we've got is actually, it has its own heating element. So we can when I'll do a starter here, I'll mix up the LME and water, put it in the beaker, and then set it on the stir pot, turn it on boil, and it'll actually stir it and boil it, and then cool it down, add the yeast, throw in my stir stick, and let it go to town. And you'll know if it's not working. Of course you won't have any fermentation. I put a little bit of sanitized foil on the top of the beaker, but you can see, just like if you were making bread, when you hydrate yeast, it'll start to bubble. You'll see the same thing in the starter. But sure, starters are easy to do. A couple cups of dry malt extract and some water, and you just want some sugar for the yeast to eat, and you'll know. It's a pretty simple thing. There's lots of videos on YouTube, and there's lots of information on the internet about making starters. In fact, they've got starter calculators. If you're doing a lot of the lager beers that we brew require a certain amount of yeast as far as numbers. And if you're not using Imperial, that's one of the things about lager beer is you've got to have lots more cells than you would on just an ale because of the temperature that you ferment in. And so that's why we have the stir plate, and that's why we do starters, and we can build up to bigger numbers. But yeah, I would definitely do that.
And Todd, I've not seen you do a starter before, but I do know you as well. Or you don't mind if the yeast is real far gone in the very batch, sometimes you just double up on the pack that you'll pitch. Like if one is good for 5 gallon, but it's old, you'll just do 2 because you're not worried about over pitching because the viability of that older pack is probably low enough to where it's not going to affect it having too many numbers. But is your suggestion to Paul similar, that like you can buy an expired too? Let's go over that real quick. Actually, I'm going to take a turn on the question. The date printed on the packaging, Todd, does not mean after this date the cells are dead, you're done, right?
I would. I mean, I would get nervous when it gets close to. Yeah, that date it's not done. It's done unless you're going to do a starter.
Okay, so I'm not.
Or you're going to take 2 or 3 of them and throw them in a for each 5 gallons. I mean, yeast diminishes at a fairly high percentage when it gets to that expiration date. You don't want to use it much after that expiration date. Yeah, it's done. I don't use starters because I get unlimited free yeast anytime I want it, which is a very unique situation that most people don't have. If I didn't get unlimited free yeast anytime I wanted, I would do starters. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good point. Like sometimes I'm glad you clarified your perspective, because there are times when people ask me for my insight and I'm like, listen, man, like I don't have
a leg to stand on.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm so fortunate. Like they're like, oh, for the brewing, like when we had Fred on last week and we're talking about, or pardon me, Todd and I did an episode of my adventures in homebrewing, and he asked a question about different brewing vessels. And it's just like, to me, it's like, if you can afford them, have them all, but I say to you, if you can afford them, I didn't buy them. Todd did.
Well, we have to test different things all the time. I mean, it's part of our job to test different types of equipment. So
exactly. Yeah.
We've got to brew on everything, and we've got to use every kind of yeast. And, the yeast manufacturers will say, hey, we want you to try this yeast and brew with it, and we're going to give it to you. So,
which I will say, though, to our defense, and people are going to go, well, they sponsored this week's episode. We've talked about Imperial way before they ever sponsored our show, because we have tested every brand. And that's the funny, or not funny, that's the wrong word. The coolest thing I have to say about our industry is, like, of the top, whatever 5 or 10 yeast brands there are, the second to Imperial is still really good. Like, that's the cool thing. Like for us, Imperial stands on top. Their product stands on top. The viability stands on top. Their service is bar none the best. But that's not to say White Labs is still really good. And
they all make a good product.
That's what yeast, and Y yeast is super good too. Yeah, that's what a
lot of them are the same strain.
Good point. You're right, absolutely. Yeah. But I always like to clarify that, because people think, oh, you're just in bed with Imperial. It's like, no, they're the best of the best, but that means a lot. That's like Olympics, like a first place hurdler. You're gonna go, oh, a second place hurdler, what a bum. Dude, you don't run a hurdle. You don't do a hurdle. It's like couch. What do they call it? A quarterback, or couch quarterback, or whatever. Like second place doesn't mean bad. It just like Imperial. That just, I think, speaks even more volumes to how much we love their product, because we're always
the thing that initially attracted me to Imperial yeast was this simple fact that they sell you double the cells basically that you would get from the closest competitor.
Yeah.
And to me, cell counts everything, especially if you're wanting to make a good, clean German lager. You want as many cells as you can to get that thing going without any kind of flaws.
Who was it? It was you, James, that started pushing Imperial on us, wasn't it? For brew, like I forget if it was you or Todd that started using.
Todd initially was the one that brought the product in, and then he talked to me about it, and I started looking at the specs, and I was like, my goodness, this is equivalent of buying 2 or more packs of their closest competitor. That's a big deal in homebrewing. Yeah. I think
we gotta go back. If someone listening that does a better job of archiving than I do, when we started really raving about them, because I'd be interested, because it is funny some of the feedback we get where it's just like, oh, all you told was Imperial. But then I've had one person who droned about that, and then like a month later they're like, okay, I used them, I get it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
anytime that you don't have to do starters or do anything like that saves you brew time, it's a good thing, I think.
It is a good thing. But back to the question, because people are now going to accuse me of this being an infomercial for Imperial. Yeah, Paul, I think...
Well, it did kind of sound like an infomercial for Imperial.
I know.
But you get very passionate about things and start talking about them. I know.
Sometimes I do. Well, but again, though, they're like James said too. It's just cool when you use a product and you get results.
Good results.
Good results every time. It's also the same reason why James was always a proponent for all-in-ones of the Grainfather. I mean, you are their biggest evangelist that I knew, because you're like...
Anytime you don't have to handle the beer any more than possible from start to finish, that includes starters, you reduce the chance of contamination or affecting the way you want that beer to be brewed and to taste. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's why you see a lot of commercial breweries, they can produce so much good product, consistently good products. It never touches anybody's. From start to finish, it never even touches oxygens until they want it to.
Exactly.
And anytime you can take away a step that can contribute to off flavors or something that can cause a batch to go bad is a good thing.
It's easy to get passionate about. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, Paul, I think after hearing Todd and James, if it's past the date, if it's a really good deal, sure, maybe go for it. But like James said, if it's, I mean, what kind of discounts are we talking, right? Like, even though I am a cheap man, like James said, sometimes it's not worth the effort. If you can just buy, if you're doing liquid yeast, most of them are pretty reliable, especially when they're fresh. And you know how much I enjoy not doing extra work for a brew day, because you're doing your starter the night before or the day before, and that's just extra time. What the time to make a starter and be done with it on the low end's an hour?
Well, I mean, I take 2 days on a starter, because I'm usually growing it into another, but you can do one 24 hours before.
Right. I mean, the actual labor of it, right? Like like it's an hour of your time to do the actual labor of it.
But it would almost, think about it this way, it almost have to be free to be worth the effort you have to go through. Because if you're down to less than 20% viable cells, then that's just more cells that you have to double up on until you get to a pitchable amount, which if you're doing a regular ale, that's 100 billion cells. I mean, that's what I typically try to shoot for in a 5-gallon batch. You're going to need a few days to get those kind of numbers if it's really old.
And then I'll add to it too, though. Brewing does also not save you any money. Like if everyone adding on to what you just said about your time, if you just valued your time, you'd realize a lot of things you're doing aren't saving you money. Like that's any given hobby I'm into. It's like with brewing, when people ask me like, "Oh, I got into it to save money," I'm like, "Let me know how that works out for you."
Yeah,
but
how long you been doing it would be my next question.
How long have you been doing it? That is a better question. But anyways, Paul, thank you so much for submitting your question. I told y'all it would be a little bit quicker of a show, but that was still like 50 minutes, give or take. Guys, I appreciate y'all's time. Again, before we wrap it up, if you listened to an episode before about the used Herms and then you skipped straight to this one, they're sold out. Don't go to homebrewhappyhour.com/sale, because you'll just be heartbroken that you didn't get the deals offered by Todd. But Todd's a happy guy now, how smooth that went. So we're good on that. We'll have more information soon on next month's. Oh, pardon me. Let me start with this month. April's recipes are shipping out this Friday. We had a delay from Imperial. The yeast is supposed to arrive tomorrow morning, which is Friday the 23rd. And then we have had a bunch of people in our homebrew club tell me, please don't ship it on a Friday because FedEx on Sundays just leaves it in a warehouse. So if you're adverse to, or if you don't want me to send out your kits, and by me, I mean Joe and Homebrew Supply, on a Friday, please text 325-305-6107. So I try to make sure, please get them out, especially when there's a delay on the yeast. Let's get them out. But there is a good chunk of people who are like, I've waited this long. I can be patient. Please just send it out on Monday so it's not in a warehouse. But we will have next month's recipes announced pretty soon. I forgot next week's episode is still in April. So we might have them figured out by then. I'm finally coming up next week, right, Todd? You've been keeping me away, man. I think I'm coming.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll know tomorrow.
Which is worth mentioning. I've had Kolsch Cup listeners reach out and say, hey, Todd and James judged my first beer, and if y'all still have the second bottle, I'd love to hear your feedback, Josh, on what you thought about my Kolsch. And one specific brewer, Anna Britt, wrote in, and she was like, oh, would you try it? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to be up there. That'd be great. And then I didn't get up there. Oh, next week I'll be up there. That'll be great. And then I didn't get up there. And then Todd sends an email and goes, Anna Britt, I found your Kolsch in my fridge. It was incredible, delicious, brought me right back to when I was at Cologne. You knew I wanted to drink that and try it.
I didn't know. You did not ever tell me that you wanted to drink that. I never was on that email chain. I had no knowledge whatsoever.
Oh, you just happened to.
If you have other ones, that you want to try.
Tell me the number.
Send me a list of those so I'll be sure and I don't drink them before you get here, okay?
I will say this, though. I think that's super cool that you're following up with people who submitted Kolsch. That's really cool. That's probably the best idea you've had.
Yeah, he's sending out, just so people know, he's sending out emails to the people that he's drinking the submissions. So I think it's really cool too.
Yeah,
they're decent emails. Hopefully you don't get the 6th one of the night, but you know.
Anyway, I hope to be a part of this email chain too if I ever make it up to the barn. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for your time. I'll see y'all soon.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question that you would like us to discuss on a future episode, go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, Imperial Yeast, for supporting us and the home brewing community. You can get a free pack of Imperial Yeast with your monthly recipe kits when you join our super duper homebrew club at homebrewhappyhour.com/club. On behalf of Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.